Story 1. My wife cheated with her former student. My wife cheated on me with her former student. I contacted that guy's wife, and together we took revenge. There's nothing a person is not capable of because of love. I am 37 years old. I am married to Emily. She's 35. We have been together for 2 years. Emily is a college lecturer and I work in marketing. We met at a party hosted by mutual friends and became friends. We added each other on social media, but for a long time nothing happened. At that time she was dating someone, and I also had a complicated on and off relationship. About 4 years ago, on her birthday, I congratulated her on Facebook. It was already well past midnight. Our conversation lasted all night, and the next day we met for coffee. She had no plans for her birthday, so I invited her to dinner and a long drive out of town. That's how it all started, and 2 years later we got married. Just a month ago we celebrated our second wedding anniversary. Life was calm until a few weeks ago, when a friend told me that he had seen Emily with some young guy, about 20 years old. I asked him what was so strange about that. Maybe he was just a friend? My friend replied uncertainly that judging by their behavior, it didn't look that way. They were sitting very, very close. His hand was on Emily's waist and his lips were almost touching her cheek. He stood there for a while to make sure he wasn't mistaken and then clearly saw them hugging. I asked whether he had taken a photo, but he said everything happened too fast and he didn't react in time. Besides, it was in a public place, and he was afraid people would judge him for filming a kissing couple. Still, I believed my friend, but there wasn't enough proof to confront Emily. You can't just label your wife a cheater based only on someone else's words. When I came home, Emily was calmly reading a book. I wanted to ask if she had met anyone that day, but I didn't know how to do it without sounding suspicious. It would have been easier if we were one of those couples who share every detail of their day. It's not that we didn't tell each other anything, we just shared what was important. To start a conversation, I talked about something trivial. I said that I had accidentally run into a school friend during a meeting with a client. It turned out he is now one of our customers and we had lunch together. Her reaction was normal. Oh. It must have been pleasant to see an old friend. I said, yeah, and asked about her day. She said nothing special happened and went back to her book. I felt that something was wrong. If that guy had been just a friend or a colleague, she would have mentioned meeting him. That meant he wasn't just an acquaintance. From that day on, I started watching Emily closely. For several days, I noticed nothing suspicious, but I couldn't let it go, so I decided to take the next step. I checked her phone. At night, while she was sleeping, I unlocked it. Incoming messages and social media were clean, only normal chats with colleagues and students. I checked the call log too, nothing strange. Then I scrolled through the call history for the day my friend had seen her with the guy. I found a call right around that time. The contact was saved as Lucas 16, meaning a student from the class of 2016. Emily saves students' contacts by name and graduation year so she doesn't get confused. I was stunned. You could maybe accept her sitting closely with a friend, but with her own student? That was disgusting and disturbing. I realized that I had checked chats with her colleagues and friends, but not with students. The last thing you want to imagine is that your wife is sleeping with her student. I opened WhatsApp again and found the chat with him. They had been exchanging intimate messages for the past several months. Before that, there were only old messages from 2016 with goodbyes and wishes of all the best. It turned out that about 2 months ago he wrote to her saying he had returned to the city. After graduation, he had moved to another state. I couldn't read the entire chat on her phone, so I exported the conversation to my email and deleted the chat history. I wanted to read everything she had written to her young lover. I spent the whole night doing that, rereading the messages again and again. From the messages I learned that they had slept together while he was still studying in college. It all started when Emily began teaching his classes during his final year. Lucas noticed that she had a weakness for him and started flirting with her little by little. At first, Emily joked it off, but then she got drawn in and admitted that she couldn't suppress the desire to feel his body. That's how their relationship began. But by the end of his studies, he fell in love with someone else, the daughter of a wealthy businessman from another state, and after graduation he moved there with his girlfriend. When Emily found out, she was devastated, and to comfort her, Lucas slept with her several more times during the last months before leaving. When I had previously seen their chat on her phone, I had only noticed the farewell message and didn't scroll up. Now I was glad that I had exported everything. That's how I understood the full picture. Emily would never have confessed to this in such detail. Ironically, at that time Emily herself was dating someone else, which means she had always been a cheater. After Lucas left, they didn't communicate, except for congratulating each other on holidays. About 3 months ago, Lucas wrote to her saying that he had returned to the city with his wife. That same wealthy girl from another state was now his wife, and he was running her father's business here, in our city. Lucas was the one who first wrote to Emily that he missed her body and wanted to taste it again. At first, judging by her replies, it seemed like she was resisting, but in the end, she gave in and slept with him several times, judging by the chat, 4 or 5 times. When I finished reading, it was already dawn. I had to go to work the next day, so I tried to get some sleep. When I woke up, Emily had already left for college. I made breakfast and went to the office as well. When I came home, Emily wasn't there. Usually she comes back from college by 5 p.m., but it was already 7 and she still hadn't returned. Before, it never bothered me if she stayed late with friends or colleagues, but now everything was different. I wanted her to come back as soon as possible so we could clear everything up. I had all the evidence, and there was no point in beating around the bush. This knowledge was choking me, and I wanted to end this as quickly as possible. Time passed. I grew more and more nervous. I called her and told her to come home. She asked, "Is everything okay? You never do this." Half an hour later, she was home. When she walked into the house, I was sitting on the porch. She immediately understood that this was serious. I didn't have my phone or my tablet with me. I was just sitting there. She ran up to me and asked, "What happened?" "What happened?" I repeated. "Sorry for interrupting your meeting with Lucas." That's his name, right? She looked at me coldly and asked, "What are you even talking about?" I said there was no point in playing hide and seek anymore. She started accusing me of making baseless accusations. Then I showed her the exported chats, and she froze. She stood there in silence for several seconds and then declared that I had violated her privacy. Seriously? Me checking her phone was a violation of boundaries, but her climbing into someone else's pants was apparently fine. Wow. I asked whether it was because of Lucas that she had broken up with her previous boyfriend. She snapped and said it was none of my business. But I didn't let up, repeating the question over and over until she finally admitted that her ex had also left her when he found out she was sleeping with a student. I laughed and asked, "How stupid do you have to be to destroy relationships over a guy who has long settled his life and is living just fine?" She replied that he was too attractive. She didn't even look guilty and claimed that I was behaving too dramatically, saying that it was just physical and without feelings. She asked me to reconsider my decision, saying that I was acting impulsively. I said, "Fine, let it be that way," and I told her to pack her things. She stomped her foot and, going into the house, screamed that I would regret it and that in 2 days I would come crawling back, begging her to return. Honestly, she must have completely lost her mind. Asking her to come back was the last thing I would ever do in my life. She packed her things while I stayed on the porch. When she left, she didn't even look at me. I said that I would soon send her the divorce papers and that if she had even a drop of pride left, she should sign them without arguing. She didn't answer and left. She acted as if I were the one at fault, as if I had committed a crime by checking her phone and exposing her cheating. When she left, there was some kind of ominous feeling coming from her, as if she wasn't going to let this go so easily. If she had behaved calmly, I might have let the situation go. But after all her hysterics, I wanted to destroy her damn ego. I found Lucas on social media before he had time to block me. I found his wife's profile as well. It was private, so I sent her a request. At the same time, I hired a lawyer. Lucas's wife didn't accept my request even after 2 days, and I didn't wait any longer. I sent her several fragments of their correspondence. An hour later she replied, asking who I was. I told her that I was Emily's husband, the woman her husband had been sleeping with. I also sent her a piece of the chat where Lucas talked about her and her father's business. She asked me to send the entire chat. I wanted to meet her and explain everything in person, but I didn't dare. It would have looked strange. I asked for her email and forwarded everything there. She asked how I had found out, and I explained everything in detail. I told her that if she read the messages carefully, everything would become clear. A couple of hours later, she replied and asked whether Emily already knew about the cheating. I said yes. Then she said she would involve her father to deal with Lucas and went offline. I wanted to know how everything turned out, but she never came back online. 3 days passed and I started to worry that something might have happened to her. Lucas had been using her for her father's money, and I was afraid he might hurt her when everything came out. I tried to reach her through other social networks and email, but without success. I hope she was okay. Meanwhile, my lawyer was preparing the divorce papers. First update. Thank you all for the support. I really thought I was acting impulsively, but I still went through with it. I felt much better when people under the post wrote that I acted bravely and sent words of encouragement. Thank you. So, there's news. Remember I said that Lucas's wife replied? She disappeared for almost a week. When she finally answered, I didn't feel relief at first. I suspected that it might not be her, but Lucas himself using her phone. So I asked her to call me. She saw my messages where I said I was worried about her and immediately called back. That's when I calmed down. She said that right after she read the correspondence, she took the first flight to another state. She lived in that city alone and didn't want to deal with Lucas by herself. Judging by the messages, he seemed too shady, so she involved her parents. On her lawyer's advice, she turned off her phone for a week because Lucas was trying to contact her in every possible way. Her parents were afraid that if he reached her, he would talk his way out and convince her with some pathetic excuses. She said she wasn't stupid enough to believe him, but she still listened to the lawyer. Do you know what her father did to Lucas? Pure classic. They didn't talk about the cheating at all. Instead, they claimed they had found problems in the accounting of the company Lucas was responsible for. And until everything was clarified, he was supposed to stay away from his wife. Lucas couldn't understand why his father-in-law and mother-in-law suddenly started suspecting something. Her father decided that a lawsuit over infidelity wouldn't seriously harm Lucas. At most, it would force him to pay compensation for emotional damage. But that wasn't enough for him. He wanted to destroy him. A few days later, do you know who wrote to me? Lucas himself. His words were, "Dude, your wife is insane, talking nonsense and demanding that I marry her. Does she even know I'm 10 years younger? Yeah, we slept together, but I'm not obligated to marry everyone I sleep with." It turned out that when he told Emily about the problems with his father-in-law, she said that it was me who had leaked their correspondence to his wife. But Lucas replied that no one had even mentioned cheating. Everyone was worried about accounting issues. He thought Emily was simply using the situation to force him to marry her. I was literally laughing while reading his message. He was no less messed up than Emily. He sincerely believed that his father-in-law was angry because of accounting issues and didn't even suspect that the real reason was the affair. About a month later, the divorce papers were ready. I called Emily's mother and asked whether Emily was living with her. She was surprised and said no, then asked what had happened. I told her the truth. She didn't believe me and asked for proof. I was already exhausted from proving everything to everyone, so I just said that I would send the documents to her house and that her daughter should sign them. An hour later, my phone exploded with voice messages from Emily, where she screamed that I had ruined her life and destroyed everything. I didn't block her right away. I wanted to see how low she could sink. We had been together for 4 years. Even though we were married for only 2, it still hurt. When she finally finished her stream of insults, I blocked her. A week passed, and she still hadn't signed the papers. I contacted Lucas's wife to ask how things were going with her divorce. And that princess, as it turned out, was relaxing in Las Vegas, trying to distract herself from depression while her father was dealing with Lucas. Rich people, damn it, really know how to solve problems in their own way. I'll write a new update when all of this is over. For now, I just want to stay away from thoughts about Emily and start living again. Second update. My divorce is finally over. Many people in the comments to the previous update wrote that I was probably dating Lucas's ex-wife because I cared so much about her. No guys, I really wasn't. I had absolutely no time or desire for that. Besides, she isn't my type. I'm not the kind of person who goes on a luxury vacation after every disaster in life. And I certainly wasn't going to latch onto her father's money, especially after I found out how they dealt with Lucas. Lucas's father-in-law accused him of embezzling company funds and somehow managed to prove it in court. I don't know whether Lucas actually siphoned money from his father-in-law's business or whether he was framed. Lucas's wife, that same rich princess, doesn't even know how her father managed to pull it off. I already said she lives in her own world and doesn't even know how much vegetables cost. This scheme was used as an excuse to separate the daughter from Lucas. Lucas was ordered to pay an enormous sum within 3 months, otherwise a criminal case would be opened. The amount was massive. She said he wouldn't be able to pay it and would most likely go to prison. On top of that, it destroyed his reputation far more than simple cheating ever could. The father-in-law is a real bastard, but a smart one. As for my divorce, Emily pulled a lot of tricks before she finally signed the papers. She demanded my house as alimony. She had spent her whole life on the front lines of feminism, but when it came down to it, she showed herself to be a disgusting creature ready to strip me of everything I owned. Is that what feminism is supposed to be? According to her logic, she cheated on me and was still entitled to compensation. What the hell? Luckily, I had an excellent lawyer who protected my house from her claws. And thank God I had proof of her cheating. I've read many stories where people were not only betrayed but also left without a home. I wanted a clean divorce without dirt, but she made everything complicated. I had to respond in kind. She started telling her colleagues that she was divorcing me because I had supposedly cheated on her and that's why she wanted the house's compensation. Of course, everyone began to pity her. So I finally did what I should have done a long time ago. I sent explicit chats with Lucas to several of her colleagues, and you know how people crave gossip at work? Within a couple of days, those messages spread throughout the entire college, and Emily became the main topic of gossip in the department. She called me from a public phone and cursed me out for leaking everything. This time I answered harshly. I told her that either she signs the papers, or I will send everything to her friends and students, and then she will definitely become a local celebrity. My voice was cold and confident. She knew I was capable of doing it. I never wanted to sink that low, but she forced me. I didn't even show anything to her mother when she didn't believe me, because I didn't want to humiliate her. In the end, Emily agreed to my terms and signed the papers at the next hearing. I'm finally free and out of this trap. My friends are urging me to start dating again, but I want to wait. I don't want to rush into a new relationship. I no longer communicate with Lucas's ex-wife after the last update about the court. I'm not interested in how it all ended. We only stayed in touch until my divorce was finalized. Now that it's over, I don't want to drag the past into my present life. Inspired a little by that princess's example, I also decided to go on a solo trip. Not to Las Vegas, of course, but to Montana. I hope that after a mountain hike in Montana, I'll return renewed and stronger. Thank you to everyone who listened and supported me. Music. And now we move on to the next story. Story 2. My brother's girlfriend is pretending to be pregnant. I insist that my brother's girlfriend prove that she is pregnant, otherwise she will have to move out of my apartment. My brother is 24 years old and his girlfriend is 27. They've been together for several years. Sometimes everything is fine, then they break up. It's always the same. A few weeks of happiness, then they fight over some nonsense. Everything becomes awful. Then they make up and pretend to be in love again. I am 20 years old. When I found out that my brother had been kicked out of his apartment and that he and his girlfriend had nowhere to live, I offered them a free room in my place. My brother agreed to pay rent, contribute to utilities, and chip in for food. For 3 months now, she has been claiming that she is pregnant. She alone can destroy a box of 50 small bags of chips in a week. I tried to talk some sense into her and asked her to control her appetite, not only because it's overeating, but also because the food runs out very quickly. But she insists that everything is fine with her and the baby, that it's just cravings and pregnancy stuff. Since last month, almost everything my parents send me disappears immediately. My mom loves coupons, buys in bulk, and shares the excess with me. The first one to get to it is my brother's girlfriend, and most of the supplies vanish within a few days or a week. Out of a pack of 24 cans of Monster, the energy drink for those who don't know, she drinks 8 in a week by herself. She eats an absolutely insane amount of food, and mostly things that pregnant women definitely shouldn't consume in such quantities. Yes, I know every pregnancy is different, but it's impossible to describe how much she can eat in one sitting. Today I saw her drinking coffee, and after her second mug I asked whether she should even be drinking that much. She said the doctor allowed it and everything was fine. When I suggested switching to a healthier diet for the sake of the baby, she snorted and left the kitchen. I went to my brother and asked whether he had ever been to a doctor with her or seen a positive pregnancy test. He said no. I talked to her and she claimed that she didn't owe anyone proof and immediately became defensive. Then I said that either she shows a test or at least some confirmation of a doctor's visit, or she would have to move out because she doesn't help with anything. My brother took her side and suddenly changed his story, saying that he actually had seen the test. My parents found out what I said, and my mom claimed that I shouldn't have interfered, that every woman's body is different, and that I wouldn't understand until I got pregnant myself. Am I the asshole? Edited. I had already talked to her before about getting a job and helping financially. She said she would, but she never did. Overall, judging by most of the comments, yes, I may have gone too far, but I still trust my intuition. I will give them a 30-day eviction notice and close the issue. I will definitely post an update in a month when they're supposed to move out and tell everyone who's interested how it all ended. I'll repeat that my brother is aware of everything I said about excessive caffeine, lack of ultrasounds, and so on. Yes, my brother still buys her tampons every month. I know this because he goes with me when I buy mine. And no, I wasn't pretending to be concerned when I asked about the coffee. She drinks 2 mugs of coffee a day plus Monster. That's a ton of caffeine. And before we move on to the update, I suggest you write your opinion in the comments right now. Is this girl really pregnant, or is she faking it? Honestly, until the very end, I thought she actually was pregnant, but when I heard about the tampons, everything suddenly became very strange. Let's find out what happened next. Update. So I gave my brother and his girlfriend 30-day notices. They were supposed to move out this Friday, but since last Friday, I've been living alone again. Basically, ever since I handed them the notice, they fed me a ton of lies. First, it was that she couldn't get a doctor's appointment or an ultrasound because everything was booked with COVID patients. Then my brother's girlfriend showed me an ultrasound image on her phone, which I later found on Google Images. I asked, why is it just a photo on your phone and not, for example, on paper? She replied that it had been emailed to her after a doctor's appointment that she supposedly couldn't even attend. Then last week, my brother brought baby clothes home, apparently to support the lie. But they weren't clothes for a newborn, they were sizes for 9 to 12 months. When I asked why there wasn't a single item for a newborn, he said, so the baby can grow into them. At the same time, he claimed she was expecting a girl. I didn't ask anything else. I knew I would only hear more lies. On Friday, I came home and found them in the middle of a huge fight. In the end, I had to call the cops because they wouldn't calm down. At that moment, both of them revealed their truth. My brother's version, his girlfriend had been kicked out of her apartment, then her parents kicked her out too, and she forced him to bring her to my place by pretending to be pregnant. He said that after about a month, he already realized she wasn't pregnant because she got her period. But she forced him to keep lying, so I would let her stay. The girlfriend's version, my brother himself invited her to live with me, and to make sure I wouldn't refuse, he told her to pretend to be pregnant because I would supposedly feel sorry for her. I won't go into details, but I am 100% sure that her version is the truth and that he would come up with some explanation about the tampons. She said that he told her to eat all the food so everything would look convincing. That's basically it. Both of them took their things and left. Hopefully, each in their own direction. So now it's no longer my problem. Well, that's all. Thank you for listening to both stories all the way to the end.